Welcome back to another episode of our Mega-lo-Mania and Unreal Engine. So I did attempt to make some changes over the last couple of days since the last stream, but I did run into some problems with the project. I found that I was trying to move a file from one folder to another, and it kept telling me a file already existed in that location, but I couldn't see it within the project itself. So I did try and fix it manually on the file system, and basically just made a mess of it. I did find in the end that there's a fix up redirectors in folder, and that seemed to fix the problem once I started again. But it meant that I had to check out from the source code, and I hadn't committed, unfortunately, the most recent changes, so I had to reapply them. I hadn't lost the code, just hadn't managed to commit them before I started moving files around. But basically took quite a while to put everything back in the same place and get back to where I was. So that means that some of the functionality I'm not 100% is working at the moment, but I wanted to kind of start work on the next part of it, because I felt there was a lot of bits and pieces that I was doing in various places which I was kind of just working against how the end game will work anyway, in terms of how the research is done or how the construction is done. By adding those tasks immediately and then having to manage them isn't really how the gameplay is going to work anyway. So I also wanted to kind of make a more kind of finalized starting point, because I think I've got kind of a prototype that can make the map from the sectors, and the island, the whole island from the sectors, and it can do that given a particular sector, given a particular island. And I also have bits and pieces on how the buildings and stuff's going to work. So I've restructured or reorganized more than restructured all the directories, and I've got basically a few top level directories. One for all the data, that's going to contain all the structures, all the data tables and any enumerations that I define. And then I've got one for the game that's going to contain all the core blueprints for the game and any other supporting blueprints sectioned as required, including like the UI one for all the UI stuff, buildings for all the buildings, and so on and so forth. I have another directory for kind of more generic library code, although some of those library functions are kind of related to this game and what they do, and perhaps in those cases where I've made library functions for the game itself, they should really be in the game, but again, there's still some work to be done. I've got a folder for the main menu, which is something that was kind of put together early on as another prototype, and then finally there's some textures, the kind of raw images. So I'm going to build off this particular structure, and I'm going to work on I guess you could call it the kind of game lobby if it was a multiplayer scenario, but also is kind of similar when you're playing it the single player. And realistically, that's where you choose the island you want to play on, the opponents and all the player color, things like that. Not particularly keen on the name of it, but the principle is going to be that, and I can fix up the name a bit later on. So in this case we are going to start with a level which will be our island selection level, and let's load that up. So the island selection level is really just going to focus on kind of UI elements. It will, as I say, it will kind of share a lot of the functionality with how the game lobby should work. But at this point, it's really just going to be a couple of bits and pieces of UI, just to kind of get it moving. So I have my UI directory, and not that one, the widget. So I'm going to start with just a simple layout, as I kind of did in the game, and we're also going to have again, not that one. Just trying to think how we're going to put this all together. Yeah, so we're just going to call it options, and again, this is not going to be the final result in how it's all going to fit together, but I want the basis of what I'm trying to get here is some ability to define what kind of parameters the game's going to have, so I can verify the kind of level transitions from the island selection effectively to the game itself, and make sure things like how the island is picked and rendered and how the player color is picked and handled is all done in accordance with how the game's kind of going to work, rather than me just hard coding values and hoping that it's going to fit together. So in the options thing, I'm going to have an input box for a combo box, that's what I was looking for the island, and I'm going to have a combo box for the player color, and a combo box for how many opponents, up to the maximum for that island, hopefully. So the basic point here is it's going to kind of be like to start with, a single player new game kind of setup type options case. So we'll have a button, and then inside that button we'll have some text, and we'll need some text to go with those. So obviously this is a bit messy, so we'll put in our horizontal box, I think would be a good one to start with. No, not that one. A vertical box is what we want, and make that full screen. And then we will have our horizontal boxes. Just piece everything together. There we go. These are the wrong way around. So this one is going to be our island. This one will be our actually we'll call it I think they refer to them as gods in the game, so we'll keep that, and rather than going for a select box, we'll just change that control. And this one will be opponents. Random paste there. That's opponents. Hopefully it's copied it now. I'm posting random things. There we go. Opponent, yep. Okay, so this one will be a drop down box of 4 options. Can we define the options? Yep, there we go. Well, I suppose there's actually just 3. You either have 1, 2 or 3 opponents. A selected option can be 1. So I think we want a spacer before and after that, hopefully, so we can kind of try and center these all the same. No, that's probably why we want. Do it this way instead. we go. So it's just trying to get put the vertical box. And it should go like that. There we go. And the vertical box is filled. That centers everything, and then we can obviously apply these correctly. So the combo box needs to be on the right. Not really sure why we don't want that one to be like that. We want it to be more like that. That's better. We probably want a title and some spacer just at the top here. So this one we're going to have to fill in with data from the data table. So white line and fill. I think we'll take out the God part simply so we have more room. So what I wanted to do in this case was drop in some images. And we will use the sprites. I don't think actually we've cut them out, so might have to go and dig them out of our sprite. Yes. So just find a sprite from that particular sheet. Just do this roughly. So I can give them better names a bit later. Done that one. So again, we'll just use the same order that we cut them out in, just for simplicity. 3 and 4. There we go. So we just reduce the weighting of these spacers until we get 0.5 instead. So we need to keep them even, but we want to make sure this center part has a higher weight, and therefore, as is evident, we get more space on our player selection. So I center those horizontally as well. Probably want to reduce the font because it looks a bit over the top. Font. This one. So just take it down to 20. So we'll call this the new game options. That's a pretty simple, straightforward way of doing it. So one's right aligned, that one should be right aligned and fill. There we go. That's just a space, and this will be our start game. With a boring button, but that'll do. Okay, so within our layout, at the moment, because we're not going to put anything else in place, the layout really is just going to contain the options. So we'll have a named slot, and that named slot will just fill the screen, and the named slot then allows us to add that widget and remove that widget quite easily. Options slot. So because we, in this case, kind of just want to show the options now, we'll just do it in the pre-construct. Create widget. That'll be our options. And not that one. So just make sure I pick the right one for the slot. It might be add child. I'll go with add child. That way. That'll do. Okay, so that should show it on the layout. Now in our island selection game, level blueprint, on the begin play we want to create that widget, and we'll just create our layout. I think actually I've got two layouts. Yeah, thought that might be the case. So we just want to rename this one. Again, until I come up with a better name, we'll just keep that one going. Too far. So now in our level blueprint, where it's gone. Select that one. And add it to the viewport. So we should be able to run that and see our screen. Okay, so not perfect. The resolution obviously isn't the same as what I was creating the widget on. The options widget. So we need to reduce that down to, I think I've got it 800 by 600. So it gives a better idea of where we want to aim for. Don't know if I can actually set the resolution anywhere, but because the screen sizes have all these selection of screens, but none of them are ever 800 by 600 because who uses that anymore? So just have to reduce the weighting of those a bit more. There we go. Now we should get it about center. Yeah, so that's good enough. What we're aiming for. So currently our player controller is going to be menu game mode for the project. So what I'm going to do is select the game mode to be which one do we want? Just the game mode base. That's kind of like the default. We don't have any control over it. Creates a few bits and pieces, but none of them really are going to affect what we've got here. Because the island selection is going to need kind of a mouse cursor, we will get the player controller. I don't know if I can remember 100%. That's not the one I wanted. sure that's the one I want, but we'll try that first. Nope. Just have to check what it was that I was using or need to use in this case. So I just need to find the nodes, 'cause I can't remember their name, that I need for this mouse control.
And if I actually pull up the load left map to load,
No,
so
it's
from
here
the
somewhere.
screen,
There we go. So it is set input mode. Set input mode. UI only. And we want to focus on that layout. And it is show mouse cursor. So, oh, not get it. We want to set it. Set show mouse cursor. So that should give us. Well, that doesn't work, does it? Kind of locks okay, but show mouse cursor doesn't seem to show the mouse cursor. Let's maybe turn it off dedicated server, see if that makes any difference. Nope. So our selection box for our things, the mouse cursor is not showing, but don't really know why. Obviously we get there, but we don't get a mouse cursor. I think actually that it might be something to do with the project settings. Let's see if that's got anything to do with it. Yeah, so if I just delete that for now. I think that was where I was having it as that, yeah, don't know if that's actually worked. Yeah, so it's because I changed it to show, to render a kind of custom mouse cursor widget, but for some reason that widget wasn't being found, so the mouse wasn't shown. But the widget should exist. It's just one of the side effects from everything that I changed. Yeah, certainly not working. That was in the UI here, I think. So we seem to have lost our sprites. Red, green, blue, and yellow. That's better. So now I've got my fancy cursor back, even though it doesn't seem to work very well because it's somewhat under where the mouse is. In fact, I can't seem to click on my drop down list at all. So there's some problems with my cursor, so I'm going to take that off obviously, because that's not where we really want to be dealing with. I don't know if it's because the image is too big or it doesn't quite line up, but nonetheless, we won't deal with that right now. So we've got the opponent selection. That's fairly obvious. You can either have one or you can have three. I might limit that to the island, but we do need to populate the island. So again, too far. It's going to be done in the options. This one is going to be our Island combo box. It's going to be our opponents combo box. We're just going to tie these images up. Rather than trying to do anything smart, we're just going to have the on mouse button down binding to handle it. Because it's not permanent, and let's be in this one. Did I use the same binding for both buttons? That's not going to work well. One mouse button down 0, one mouse button down 1. And finally that one. So it's red, green. Let's just make that blue and yellow. Red, green, blue, yellow. So in our graph we'll say on mouse button down red, green, just so they actually make some sense. And again, we're going to keep it really simple. We're going to have a Boolean value, which is a name, not called name, it's going to be called character. And we're going to set that to the name of the character you choose. So in our red function, we're going to not get it. Get the key combination right. Set it. Just want to use their real names. Fairly certain the red one is Scarlet, but I struggle to remember all the rest. And green, so just go back to the red. Copy those. Green is Caesar. Blue. Madcap. Finally, yellow. There we go. All that up. So actually, we're gonna kind of add maybe an effect to these character portraits in the end. We're going to default, and while I would very much like to default it to the green character, because that's generally the one I always choose, I will default it to the one on the left hand side, just because that's a slightly better choice from the UI perspective. And I'm going to say in the tick. So I need to just tie these images up or name them appropriately. That's image red. I mean, in theory I could I may actually go through and rename these to their actual character names, just again to keep it a little bit more consistent. But for the time being, so what we'll do is in the tick we'll switch on name. And make array. So I'll add these into an array, and then we can loop through them. So we switch on the name actually on the completion. At the beginning we are going to, for the body, going to set the color and to set it to grey color, see if that works, and then actually I'll just set the opacity, so that might work a bit better. So set the opacity to 0.2, and then on the one that we are actually using is this one. So we have to fill in the names all on again in this case, because we haven't defined them in any other place. It might be better to define them as an array or as a data table or whatever. I think I actually have them as a data table. Oh, actually I've got to get the right order. Red, green, blue, and yellow. But yeah, it might be better to have them as an array somewhere so that I don't have to keep typing them out, make sure it's all consistent. But again, just for the kind of options UI that we're going for here, this will be fine. Actually, I'm going to copy that. Actually, I don't need many, I just need one. So basically, whichever one it is, we want to set the opacity back to 1. Why is that a problem? Self is not an image. Of course it's not. That is true. Self is not an image. Okay, so that's why we need to just do 4. Again, there might be a slightly nicer way of doing this, for the interest of getting it done. So blue is third, green is second, red is first, yellow is last. So the click didn't work. Huh. Doesn't seem to be very reliable. Maybe it's because the name changed. I just need to make sure all the bindings are correct. So just, because that's all I did before. No, blue and yellow don't seem to like it. Red doesn't like it either. Can I change it just once? No, yellow doesn't like it at all. Okay, so it's red, the green, F9. see if we can see why that's not working. So green's okay. Blue. Blue does not call, yellow doesn't call, red doesn't call, but green does. So just tying up those bindings again, make sure that so it's just some, maybe when I renamed the function it hasn't bound everything up properly. So we'll stop, remove it, and set it again. That's it, they all work now. So we can select our character, we can only obviously select one of them, no matter how fast we click. So that's fairly neat. The opacity seems to work well. I think it might be nice if I, maybe, no, because if I disable it, it will get the green grayscale that I think it would have been quite nice, but it also will mean you can't click on it, which is not what we want. So that works for that. Now we need to populate the names of the island. So we want to do that in the pre-construct again so that we can see it in the editor. So we get the data table names, and in theory we could just show them, but they're not actually going to be the display names. So we have to iterate over all the records in our data table. And then add it to our island combo box. Oops. So add option. Option is a string. So we'll tie that up. It actually looks like the display value is the same as the let's see if that works, because that perhaps isn't going to be quite good enough. I mean, it's certainly populated the list, and my, that's a poor list. Okay, maybe that's partly due to poor font choice, but still. Where's the font? Style. Item style. Font, there we go. So let's put that down to 12 and regular. Okay, slightly better, but the way it renders it, it's not particularly great, and I don't think I can see complete at the top. Seems to definitely disappear up there, so clipping isn't great. Awesome, we can select sounds for when it's pressed. Definitely a lot of styling options available. Don't really know how to make it kind of fit a bit better on the screen though. Again, I'm not gonna spend too much time if there's nothing obvious. Try that one. Nope. I don't really want it to go up and down. I just want it to go down and have a set height. Max list height 100. That's much better. Still doesn't work great with the final map, which has such a long name, but works well enough for the rest of the options. That one will do for now. So alignment. Yeah, okay, we'll stick with that. It's functional, if not well presented. Okay, so style, item, font, color. So on generate widget. What's that one? Oh, that must be for each of the items. Oh, that's neat. So that would allow me to override the widget that's created for each item. One thing that would be useful there would be to appropriately provide the display name, because the item, the string, that's what I'm going to get out of it when someone selects it. And while there probably isn't much translation in the island names, it'd be good to at least have the ability to do so if one wanted to. Okay, so on the combo box selection, we get an event instead of a function, but that's okay. We do want to get rid of the binding for the create widget though, because I bet that means at the moment, oh, it still does it, even with that binding. Must have some default, but we will just remove it anyway. So we may come back to that, may do that a bit better. And equally for now, rather than using the display name, I will just use the row name. And we'll add a comment here. Use row name to lack of option display text. So eventually I'd like to use the display name for display and the item name to actually show that item. What I can do is pass the name into the option and then use that function binding we saw earlier to actually create a nice widget and store and handle both values. But for now, we've got this selected item. That's going to be our string, that's going to be our island. So we're just going to promote that to a variable and call it island. We probably want that to be a name. Even though it has to do that conversion, it's just going to be slightly better. Because that's what we're going to use it as anyway. Come on. In the future. So finally we need the selection of opponents. Again, one graph. And we're just going to bind to the selection changed, and in this case our selected item is going to be a number, so we're able to select an integer here and tie that up. There we go. And that will be opponents. So that's basically our three options that we're providing in this case. And now we just need our start game button to work. So we want the on clicked. Now we're not going to do any validation because there will be no way for them to have no options. So firstly we want to make sure a default value is selected. Select maybe? Set selected option. First. Nope. Get. So we get the first item from our row names, and we set the option to that. On the completed. Yep. So we set the first island, we set the first opponents. Now there's no way that they can select nothing in this case, so we don't have to validate that. And again, there's no way they can't select any player or opponents. So even if they choose an island like that, so Aloha, which only has 2 spaces, they can potentially select 3 people. But we'll deal with that a bit later on. So we're going to have this as the start button. So when that's clicked, we need to transition over to our new level. So we're going to create a new level for the actual game, just so that we have that kind of starting point, not in the cursor directory. Oh, that's not in the cursor, so call it the island game for the time being. That's our. Oh, we won't switch to it yet. That's our new game. And we're already here. Find the right place. So this is where the button's pressed, and again just going to refer back to the right bit. In the tutorial I was checking just to make sure this all fits together right. Load stream level, that's what we want. So we're going to call load stream level island game. So we'll actually get that button and set enabled. Set is enabled to false. We'll just stop from pressing the button again. Let's just check that works. Yep. So we want to load that level. So as it stands, nothing's going to change because nothing's unloading the current level or removing it from the game at all. So we want want to unload stream level, and we want to unload the island selection level, I think we called it. Oops. Oh yeah, island selection. So again, nothing changes because we're moving the, even if it is actually getting to here. And even if the island, the new load stream level is working and the other one is working too, we're not removing the widget that we've added. So this is all within the options. So let's see if this will work. So we need to, in here where we're creating the widget, we need to listen for the on-click start button event, or handle the on-click start button event from that widget. Yep. So to do that, we will need a event dispatcher on clicked start. Doesn't need, what we can do is add our 3 options. Well, actually do it the other way around. That's sad, I can't add them to that in that way. So we want firstly the island, then the character, then the opponents, so we pass all 3 of those in. That's actually the wrong place, we want to call it, and we won't do that yet. Really? That's annoying. Changed the arguments to an event, but didn't change the arguments to the actual dispatcher. That's a bit silly. Do it again. The right arguments, so we want to just pass in the character, the island, and the opponents. Not do that one. And then in the, yes, unfortunately our options is actually 2 levels deep because of the layout. It's likely that island selection, yeah, for the time being, again, I'm just going to skip the complication of that, because we don't actually need to have that layout layer just yet. It should produce the same result. We can click start and our event is called. That way we can bind to it here. On clicked start. So when that's done, we want to do the stream, load stream level, and we want that to be the island game, once that's completed, we want to unload our current level, which is the island selection. See if that makes any difference now. Nope, good. But we can see that it got here, so we can see that that actually did what it was meant to do when it's got here. We'll make that one visible. No effect. So what we actually need to do is simply remove all the widgets from the viewport before we unload that, and then they're gone. So we should be looking at our new level now, our island game level, and since our island game level doesn't have anything on it yet, it's not going to show much, but we're going to what can we do? Something quick. What widgets have we got? I think just task. Yeah, so we'll just show this task widget just so that our island game blueprint has something in it. So we'll create a widget, basic task, add to viewport. So that should yeah, so we've got it shown. So now if we go back to our island selection game, play that, accept the defaults. Now it's not shown. Now I believe that that's not shown because we need to show the levels in there. So we've got this persistent level, and what we can do is add does it already exist within the world? Maybe that's true. Let's load up something different. So we'll start here. We'll call it the new world, even though that's what it was called to start with. So that should be our persistent level, and that should be what we always start with. And then we want to add our island selection and our island game. And now let's see what happens. Okay, so island selection should go first. See if that works. Okay, so we need to go to our new world. Hi Tusk. I am working on a game called Mega-lo-Mania, or a kind of rewrite of Mega-lo-Mania in the Unreal Engine. So today I've started kind of working on trying to put things together in a bit more of a concise way based on how the game works and the menus and the levels. I have some other working prototypes of various parts of the game, but effectively it's this game from quite a long time ago, 1991 I think it was originally released. So it's kind of a RTS type game, although calling it an RTS and comparing it to things of this kind of era is probably a bit of a stretch, but it's an RTS nonetheless, where you do research, you create units, and you fight against the opponents. So I've got all the graphics for it, to varying degrees, and I'm just trying to create it in Unreal Engine, partly so that I can learn how the engine works and kind of work on a project that makes some sense to me, and partly because I like the game, so it seemed like a good idea. So what we need to do in our main level, our new world level, is stream the appropriate sub-level that we want, which is island selection. And make it visible. That should show the UI again. Okay, and now we should be able to select start game. Oh, missed. And we still don't see our UI for our next level. Let's just change that to island game. Play it. Yeah, so we do see it if we stream it directly. So we'll just see that I did it correctly in the selection. Yep. So they're correct. But we don't see the widget show up. So what am I missing? So the errors should just be that the it's not really the right error, is it? It's just basic task, yeah. So I guess that's because it's none. Yeah, so I removed all the widgets before loading this level. Maybe that's the problem. Let's do it this way around instead. Ah, thanks. That made a lot of sense as soon as you mentioned it. Yeah, so I streamed the level, had the make visible after load or whatever what I would needed to show those widgets, and then removed all the widgets. So Tusk there, providing a little help. So that works. It's kind of functional. We'll obviously need to build up the actual island level, but that is working as I would like. So the only other thing is that at the moment our to keep new world selected now. So what I'll do is in the project settings, we will set the new world as the default map. Editor startup map is going to be new world. Game default map is new world. Server default map is new world. Should be fine. So that means that when I reload the project tomorrow, I'm not facing the wrong level or anything. So in our selection, we have these three variables, and what we don't have is those three variables available to us anywhere outside of this blueprint. Now, the way that we're going to transfer them across, I believe, is the game state. Just need to confirm that's the one that, again, my little tutorial used. Game instance, sorry, game instance. So unfortunately to get as a game instance, close that one. Macros, basic task. So we can get the game instance, but that's going to give us a basic game instance, which doesn't know of any of the properties that we need to set. So we want to set our game mode, and where is the one we want? That one. Game mode override, selected game mode. Yeah, so we can't change them unless we override the game mode with our own. Actually, that's game state, game instance. Maybe that's not the right place. Don't remember how to set my own game instance. Must have done it before. Yeah, so I set it there. That would be on this one. Just trying to find the right bit to set the game instance because I can't remember where it was. Game mode. Yeah, so I can cast it to the right one once I've defined what it is. The issue that I can't remember where I tell it what it is, because if I don't define it, then it won't cast. So if I jump back to the New World one, I can't find where I set the game instance blueprint. I just thought that if I did try and cast it to, so if we create a new blueprint, instance. So create our new instance, game world instance. We add our variables here. Project maps and modes. Thanks again, Tusk. It's so long ago since I set it on this prototype. I forgot where it went, but it makes sense again that it's not in the levels, because it's kind of sits above the levels. So that's it. So we need our 3 variables in this case. They kind of are going to be kind of player options if we've got multiplayer, or when multiplayer kind of works. But again, just try and get this particular example working. I'm going to stick with simple single player values, and then probably next stream work on trying to get them to play together. So there's character, there's island, I think they have to be little eyes so I can edit them. So I don't need that one. And I'm going to edit the blueprint for our selection. Cast it to our new world instance. Now we know it's definitely going to be that one. We don't need to do it as a non-pure. Yeah, so we can get to all the variables even if we don't. Character. Oop, no. Set character. Set island. So there's the 3 variables we need. So I realised that we're removing all the widgets before we load the next level and then show the level. Obviously in our case it's kind of completely seamless and nobody's ever going to know, but if it took longer to load, then it wouldn't be a particularly good user experience, but something we can improve on later. So we'll start, so we don't see anything now. What we're going to do quickly is in our game UI, create a new widget, display game options. So this is just a temporary widget that we can use to verify those options have come through. So I'm just going to drop in a vertical box. And 3 text boxes. That one will be island, character, oops, and opponents. And on the pre-construct, we can set the text for each of these. So at the moment it's in a game instance. But we're probably going to be moving it somewhere else, really before this widget is shown in normal cases. Oops. Character. Island. You want them to be the other way around. And get opponents. Gotta show the widget before it shows up. Display game options. pick a map, pick a person, and go. So we see the character came through okay, the island came through okay, though they don't appear in the same order that I would have expected, but that's probably because I've put the widgets the wrong order. First is island, second is character. Island, character, yep, obviously. But opponents didn't come through at all, by the look of it. Probably because I didn't actually set one. That's probably why. On selection change for opponents is fine, but I don't set the opponents to be anything. Probably don't set the... if I did that, I probably don't... I still get LOO as an island. Because I set the option, obviously. But if I actually set it, it works now. So what I need to do is I set the option for the island, and then I want to set option for the. Let's take that. I want to set option for the opponent's combo box 2. We're just going to set that to 1. Should give us all our data. Nope. The opponent's combo box. Yeah, so our opponent's island combo box goes, but we don't seem to be working for the other one. Maybe option 1 isn't in our list. As best as I can tell, it is. Works when I specify or change it myself, and the selection change for the island combo box works. But 1 does not show up. Opponent's combo box. I think text and numbers should make any difference, but I thought that might be the case. So it doesn't seem to like just the number 1. Can definitely remove that one. Now we know that one works. Oh, it works with 2. Maybe because it's defaulting. Okay, so selected option 2, selected option 1, selected option 0. Oh, it's because I've done it here, isn't it? probably something to do with it setting it to its own value, although let's say because Aloha is empty, I guess that's what happens. How can we make this force it to work? I suppose actually the best option would be to set the opponents default that to 1, so don't set it. Get the opponents, pass that in. Now obviously in this case it's not going to actually trigger the event because it's going to set it to the same value it already is, but if I did change the default, then it would work in that case. Makes it a little bit more future proof in that regard. But that means we get the 1 through. If we change the default here to 2, the UI would reflect that and would get the 2 there. So we know that it works. Slight awkward way around because the selection box does not trigger the event if you're selecting the same thing, which does make some sense. It's just a bit awkward when the box is pre-populated. The alternative would have been to populate the box myself, but that would have taken more effort. So we get the values to the other side, we get them to the other level, and now it's up to the other level to do what needs to be done with that. I'm actually going to do that tomorrow, I think. I'll stop now for tonight. I did start unfortunately a bit later than I intended, which has limited the time I have, but hopefully I'll be back tomorrow. Actually I'm not sure. Unfortunately I might not be back tomorrow, so I might not be back till Thursday to finish this. A week goes so fast when you talk about it like that, though I'm sure it's not going to be quite so quick. But yeah, so Thursday might be the next time I am able to stream, and therefore able to really carry on with this. I might get some chance to do some bits and pieces that are kind of tidying up and some renaming of stuff that I've suggested I wanted to do. But the key things that we've kind of achieved today, we've created a very basic new game option screen with some core selections, and we have managed to kind of transition from one level to another and maintain some information across that. So hopefully come next stream we can utilize that information to create the right level. We know what player the player is, so we don't have to kind of guess how that information or where that information is going to come from. But I do need to address the multiplayer aspect of it kind of sooner rather than later. So I might look, maybe that would probably be the better approach for next stream, but we'll see. So yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for your help, Tusk. Saved me struggling with those particular issues longer than I should. But yeah, so I shall be back again soon. That's all for tonight. Thank you very much.